The Chewy story is kind of funny. It has nothing to do. Yeah, I have to mention this because it's it has nothing to do with the fact that a lot of people think that Bigfoot looks like Chewbacca. It has nothing to do with that. The reason why it's called the Chewy story, and I'll give it back a little back history of why it's called that, is because Chewy was our friend in the neighborhood. He was the youngest out of our group, even though he had his own age group of friends. But he'd always like hanging out with us. Which by us, I mean the kids that were growing up in the same apartment complex. There were two sets. There was us who were about 3 years older than them, and then we had the little kids. And because we had such a tight community in that apartment complex, we always looked out for each other. And so there was never any bullying. There was never any enemies made in there. Everyone pretty much looked out for each other. We all liked each other. That we had the best interest. If people from outside our circle would come in, we would always protect them. But we'd have people that would protect us because there was also another age group older than us, 4 years older than us, that would look out for us.
Brothers and stuff, right?
Yeah, you grow up around these neighborhoods, and the community is very tight knit. So if they see anything odd or strange, everyone's looking. Everyone's looking. So Chewy was the youngest one, but in terms of like being around us, I was the youngest one because I was just I was a year younger than everyone, but I was still in the same grade. So Chewy was about, you want to say, 3 or 4 years younger than me, 5 years younger than the rest of us. Oh, the rest of the group. It was me. Then there was 1, 2, 3, 4. There was 4 other of us in the group, so there was 5 of us plus Chewy, so 6. And we had such a weird friendship, because even though we'd always give Chewy a hard time, because we'd always tell him, "Hey, Chewy, why are you always hanging out with us? You have your own set of friends over there." And he's like, "Nah, I don't want to go hang out with them." It's like they're just playing. At the time it was Pokemon, and Chewy didn't like playing Pokemon. He liked hanging around with the older crowd, running around playing, tag or sports, playing basketball, soccer.
Yep.
And with that, we would take him to the pool, and look out after him. His family trusted us. His family was Mexican, and they would be like, "Hey, if you guys are gonna take Chewy, yeah, dude. Okay, can you pause it?"
Yep. Wait a second. You can go on from there. I remember. My vape is starting to get good now. I don't want to misdirect you.
No worries.
So, what happened from there? Did you witness anything?
At the pool?
Yeah, with Chewy?
Yes, we all did, actually. Not at the pool, though. The pool story is just kind of I'm just kind of going along with the fact that the kind of trust we had amongst each other with, his family and everything. Like I said, we always looked out for.
I had a lot of friends like that. I had a few friends like that. I
We
still
had.
see a few of them.
Mm-hmm. So we were always looked after by, like, the older kids that were in high school. I think we were still in high. We were still in high school. It's happened around. Yeah, no, we weren't in high school. We were still in middle school. Going into high school. So this is, eighth grade when this happened. It was winter of eighth grade, but for me.
Mm.
So I was, I want to say I was 12 years old in eighth grade. I didn't turn 13 until I was in ninth grade in high school. But back to the, so yeah, we would bring them to the pool with us during the summer, and we'd always look after them. And there used to be this. This is how protective everyone is. We used to, as kids growing up, we always had these like urban legends, right? And this is how it always starts in any like area where you grew up with a bunch of kids. You make up these legends, or you overhear other people, and it's just passed down through age group. And there was one legend of this lady who lived in the apartment complex, and the apartment complex where we lived in was very diverse. You had big families, small families. You had the newlyweds, the boyfriend and girlfriend with kids, the single moms, and then you had also the people that kept to themselves. And usually those people lived in the same kind of area, because the one bedroom apartments were kind of centralized. And so these people just kept to themselves. And the old lady with the coffins, we used to call her, every time we would see her, she always dressed the same. She didn't speak to anyone. She was very quiet, but the only activity that you would see from her would be driving home, parking her car in front of her place, getting in, and then that's it. And then vice versa, getting out and then driving to wherever God knows she worked. But she developed this this folklore that she was like, that she worked as like a coffin lady, and that she made them in her house, like in her apartment. And so we were always like trying to get a peek inside her living room or in her home as kids. You try to sneak in there when no one's looking to see if she left the window open. But the blinds, those apartments, the blinds were always closed, man. You can never get a peek in there. So it's hard to see what kind of person these folks were. But you had that you had the lady with the coffins. Then you had her neighbor who was just this grumpy man who was single. I think his wife had passed away, and he was just really grumpy. He did not like kids roaming around and hiding around his, like if we were playing tag or hide and seek, he didn't like people around his area. And he would always complain to the apartment managers, but the managers were literally the moms of all the kids that were growing up there. So they're like, they're just kids. So there was nothing they could do about it. Unless like Ryan would go home and be like, that guy complained again. My mom was just laughing at him and saying, like, what do you want me to do? They're my kids. They want to play. It's hard you live in a place where there's kids. So you maybe move out, So like all the kids that's moms were managers there, which is, we get away with stuff. Yeah, I could see you. Yeah. John P. Bringing the heat. You still there? I think you by myself now. I'm by myself. That's as high as my balls.
Sorry, man. I removed myself.
It's okay.
I never knew how to remove myself. I instead of removing the solo layout, I removed myself.
So, one of the neighbors that lived amongst those single homes, he was a very creepy guy, but we'd always call him Chewy's dad for some reason. And I don't know who came up with that. I know I didn't come up with that. I think it might have been one of my best friends, Justin, who came up with that, because he was always coming up with weird stuff like that. But he'd always be like, "Hey, look, Chewy, your dad's outside." And literally, this guy kept to himself, but he he'd always stand outside and just like stare, and he'd always have the shorts on, white t-shirt, and then his sunglasses, and he was just this old guy who drove this gray Cadillac. I had never heard him speak, never even like, except for just standing around on his porch and just like staring at people, and or in front of his house staring at people. But other than that, the only other stuff that we would know about him was the fact that we just call him Chewy's dad. Hey, this had a sinister story, man. But because years later, man, when I first moved to that apartment complex, because this is after I returned the Chewy story, but years before that, we knew that he lived there in that area,
Yeah.
and like I said, everyone knows everyone there, and if you get an outsider, like we either like you or we don't. And when I was younger, probably Chewy's age actually, we'd always hang out in the middle in the centralized area where all those little houses were, and we started seeing this kid that we knew from school started coming around, but we knew he didn't live there. And since we knew him from school, we'd always invite him to come play soccer because that's where we usually played. It was in this ditch, and it was perfect because it was big enough that people could play, but also you'd had like the perfect size amount of like two trees between each other to make goals out of. So everyone understood where the goals were and where the outside and the inside bounds were. So it was a very neutral area where a lot of kids would hang out, and it was the most popular, I believe. So we would see this kid come around, and we'd always try to invite him. And we'd be like, "Hey, we know you from school. Come chill. Come hang out and everything." He's like, "Oh no, I gotta go. I gotta go help this guy, And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And this is the time where Pokemon was popping. Like, it's the first time it got introduced to the United States, and your status is based on what cards you had. So the more cards or the cooler cards you had, like, that was your social status. You were either the coolest kid because you had the coolest cards, or you were just like poor because you didn't have any or very few. So it was a big thing.
We had those round plastic things that you played the
Yeah.
game. Throw them on the Tazos. The names
Mhm.
were called Tazos here. I don't know
I
if you
think
had
those
them
were
there.
early 90s, like still where I was like a little bit ahead from that, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about, man. That was
I didn't
I never
go through
understood.
the Pokemon craze very much
You did too?
because we were still on
Oh, you didn't.
Son Goku, Super Saiyan.
Yeah, you were on Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball
Yeah.
stuff. That's what I.
R.I.P. man. R.I.P. to the creator. That guy doesn't know. Well, he probably does know that he was probably a big influence on a lot of kids' lives.
Oh yeah, man.
So, yeah, sad to
Continue.
hear what happened.
So you were
But
talking about
so
the Pokemon.
the kid that was coming around, yeah. So the kid was coming around during that time, and like I said, we didn't really much know. We didn't know much about him except the fact that he went to school with us, and then he was he didn't live in the same apartment complex as us. So we were trying to bring him into our group to hang out because he was always popping out. And, the more people you have, the better the game is going to be when you're playing out there. So finally, one day, he sees us. This is during the time, like I said, Pokemon, and slowly we started all playing Pokemon and buying the cards. And so, instead of the ditch now being like a throwdown area for epic soccer games, it now became just a bunch of kids huddled around showing their Pokemon cards, and just like basically just going back and forth trading and showing them off and talking about Pokemon. And he finally approached us one day and he's like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And he's like, we were like, "Oh, do you know Pokemon?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course he does. You do." And pulls out like a box, man. Like, he probably had, there were 6 of us. He probably had like like 5 times the amount that we all had to combine together because these things were like in rows. And he had every single card, man, and in doubles, triples, sometimes he had 5 of each card, and we were like, whoa, we were so impressed. We're like, dude, like, where'd you get all these cards? Like, are your parents like rich or something? And he's like, oh no, it's like that guy that lives right there. He's I come and do some help for him. Like he needs help around the house, and my mom is sick, and she has cancer, and so I come and help the guy out, and he pays me, and then he also pays me in Pokemon cards. And we were like, oh man, like cool, like, and we're kids, we don't understand what's going on, and all of us, just because we're so fascinated with Pokemon, we're like, can you get us a job there? Like we're like 6 or 7 years old asking another kid, for a job so we can buy Pokemon cards or get free Pokemon cards.
Wow, man, crazy, right? For a kid.
So this kid would just get stacks and stacks of Pokemon cards, man, and we envied him. We were like, dude, that guy has it figured out. That's someone who knows what he wants in life, That's a go-getter right there. And I say that very lightly, man, because I moved back after being gone, because then I ended up moving to Florida for 2 years, and I moved back. And I ended up being back at the same apartment complex, and sure enough, everyone was still there, except for like maybe 2 people. But I moved back, and I was like, hey, he's like, what? I see the kid randomly one day. I'm going to my buddy Justin's house, and I'm like, hey, and then he just looked a mess, dude. A mess. And he just looked like he lived on the street. His pants were all ripped. He had a dirty white shirt on. His shoes were all messed up. And I remember just looking at him. I was like, hey, man. I was like, you remember me? And he was like, nah, man. Like, and I was like trying to tell him the story and everything. And he's like, oh, cool, man. Cool. Yeah, man. All right, man. Well, I got to go, man. It's like, I'll catch you later. It's like the only time I ever saw him, dude. And after that, I never saw him again. And I remember telling Justin, I was like, hey, dude, you remember that kid, the Pokemon kid? I was like, dude, I just saw him right now. He's like, no way. And he's like, we haven't seen that kid in a long time. Oh, yeah. He just walked past me, and I tried to tell him. He's like, he doesn't remember me. And he's like, yeah. He's like, seems like it. Well, like I said, Justin, his mom, like I said, a lot of the moms were managers. Justin's mom and Justin ended up moving right before my last year in high school. Justin was a grade below us, and he moved to Missouri. And then one day I get a call from Justin, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, what's up? And he's like, you're not going to believe what I just heard. And I go like, what's up? And he's like, remember that guy that we used to call Chewy's dad? And I'm like, yeah, that creepy old guy. He's like, yeah, dude. It's like, he died. And we're like, whoa. I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. I was surprised he was still alive when I came back. But I mean, he made it this far. He's like, yeah,
Old age, right?
That's not the part, man. He's like, that's not the weird part. He's like, remember how we had that suspicions about like him being like a pedophile and like a weird guy? And I was like, yeah. It was like everyone thought that he was and shit. And he's like, well, that turned out to be true. And I was like, no way. And he's like, yeah, dude. He's like, Ryan's mom called my mom, said they found him dead in his apartment because he was answering phone calls and everything. And the police and welfare check went in there and checked. And he had all these pictures of boys doing stuff for him in his room, man. They raided his house.
Wow.
And we were like, what? I was in shock, dude. But then at the same time, didn't surprise me because, and then I thought back to that kid. I was like, now it makes sense. I was like, that kid, like years later, finally realized what was going on, and maybe all that abuse. No wonder he was.
You didn't go there and do the jobs.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. And so the reason why we'd always call him Chewy's dad, and we always got that creepy vibe from that guy, and we were always like, don't let because Chewy was the youngest one out of us, like I said. And when we would go to the pool, the guy's house was literally right there. And so we would catch him sometimes when we were out of the pool. You know, we had our shirts off and just in shorts, drying off. He would
Oh,
just
and
like be
he got a view
standing.
for you.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
he
was just
was watching you
standing.
guys.
He was just watching us dry off. And we'd just laugh it off like, you know, dumb kids. And you're like, Chewy, look, your dad's looking at you. You're telling you need to go back home. And he's like, ah, be quiet. It's not my dad. But
Damn.
you know, then everything started making more sense. So then after that, when we found out, we just never let Chewy be by himself. But all right, so that's, you know, a little bit of back history of how we were so protective over Chewy, even though you know, at that time we didn't know. We were just like, okay, this guy's staring at us for too long. Like, no one be around him by yourself.
Yep.
And I guess we were rightfully in our right to believe that. So we get the first year that I'm back, you know, it's winter, and there used to be this place that had it was a salmon fish hatchery where they basically raised salmon and released them into the wild, and every year they would just keep doing it over and over. And it was a very popular spot because it was like a hiking area, and there was also woods and then the river.
Oh, nice.
So it was a very, very, very popular with the kids and everyone, well, also adults, because they would go out there and hike and take their dogs on walks and stuff. So very very populated, not so populated that there's like people all the time, but it was a well known place. And you know, that year we ended up getting very severe snow weather, right? And it's like the first time it's ever snowed that hard. Like 2 weeks straight, we had storms of just nonstop snow, and it was great because, you know, we hadn't even hit Christmas break yet, so we had like a month off. You know, we had 2 weeks off because of the snow, and then like 2 weeks off because of Christmas break. And the whole entire time, you know, I came back when Justin's dad was deployed, and his mom got stuck. I remember it snowed, and Justin was calling his mom like, "Hey, you know, we're here at the house. You need to come home," because she was hanging out with a friend, and she was just not. She was not. The car was stuck. So we had the house to ourselves for like a month, not a month, a week, right? So we were doing whatever we wanted in Justin's house. We were playing loud music. We were going outside, having all these snowball fights and stuff, and staying out late. And then Ulysses, one of our friends, good friends, we're all together, and it's like, I want to say 8, 9 at night. But, you know, it's me, my Justin, Ulysses, Tony, Hugo, and Chewy. And we're just kind of hanging out at the park, which was right next to Justin's apartment where he lived. And we're like, so what are we going to get into? And it's like, everyone's about to, you know, it's almost curfew time for most of the kids. And Ulysses was the one that mentioned it. It's like, hey, you guys want to go down to like the fish hatchery? You know, the fish hatchery, like to get to it, you have to go down this like enormous hill. And then it goes into the river and then the wooded area. And we're like, what for? So maybe all the kids are out there playing and snowboarding. And I was like, yeah, we haven't even checked it out. I was like, that's a good idea. So we all kind of made this plan that we were going to go. So we all kind of, well, since I didn't have a curfew, Justin's mom wasn't there, but the rest of the kids did. So Chewy, Tony, Hugo, and Ulysses, they had to go home and check in, and then they snuck out. And they met us at the park again. So here we are. We got two kids that are, no one's worried about, me and Justin, and then you got the other 4. And we're like telling Chewy, like, Chewy, you can't come. And it's like, no. It's like, dude, I want to hang out. And all right, cool. So whatever, man. And it's like, so we all start going. It's about a mile away. So we start walking. You know, we're all joking around, throwing snowballs at each other. And then we get to the fish hatchery a mile down later. It took about like 20 minutes. And yeah, it was, you could see it's all snowed, but it doesn't even seem like anyone had been there. all fresh powder. And I go, man, no one's throwing themselves off anything. And Justin had a mini snowboard, and he brought it with
Oh,
him.
cool.
And we were like, let's just like throw ourselves off and see like what we can see if we can do anything. And he had some of us building like little ramps to see if anyone would dare do it, but no one was. We were too scared. We were like, dude, that's too high. It's like a little thing, We were just like trying to egg each other to kill it, like break a leg. But so
Dangerous.
we're just chilling and stuff, and then Ulysses is like, we should go down to the creek, to the river. And we're like, all right, let's go see what's down there, And there was talk already around from people. You hear it from from the older kids, and then the older kids tell us, and then we tell the younger, and it just travels down the ladder. And Ulysses is like, yeah, so I was like talking to my cousin, and he's saying like they were down here one day, and they saw something, and they all ran, and so they were just calling it the creature at the time, and they're like, yeah, apparently he lives down there. And they saw it, and they ended up running. And yeah, and I was like, oh, all right, well, some of us were scared. We didn't want to go down there, but we're 6 male teenagers, and well, they were teenagers. I was still 12, and then Chewy, who's 8 or 9, and I'm just like, man, dude, what if we do end up happening, and we like something does happen, and we see this thing, and if it's not a thing, it's a guy, and then he tries to hurt us. And like, no, there's 6 of us, man. There's like, nothing's gonna happen. And I was like, all right, man. As long as we all have each other's back, and we agreed, all right, cool. So we all go down there, and so we finally go through the woods, and it's not too much. Like once you enter because there was like this corner where like the end of the trail that if you were to do the hike, it meets at the top of this this hill, but then it's fenced area all the way down the hill. But at the very corner where the hill and like the bottom there where the I guess the wooded area meets, there's like a corner. There's a corner, and at that corner some kids like use wire cutters to cut an entrance. So all you had to do was just pull it, and then you can hold it and you can go in there, and then you can bypass it. But all that area was owned by military and the fish hatchery, and so security still hadn't caught on that edge, that very corner, and had been cut with wire cutters. I mean. So we go over there, because of the snow, no one's working. I think we saw maybe one truck, but like no one was working that day, or that night either. So we, Ulysses is holding the fence up, and then we're trying to hold it so he can get in. And it's not too far from there to where the river meets, and we just start walking around, alongside. It's like let's just go see how far we can get up. So we're going south on the river. Let's see how far we can go down, and we start walking. And then we're all walking, and Chewy, because he's the youngest one out of all of us, is like trying to show off, so he's trying to get ahead of us. And we're like, fuck, this is the reason why we don't allow little kids to come with us, because then you just have to babysit them. And so we're trying to catch up to him and be like, hey, slow down, man, like don't get too far ahead, because you don't know, like if something pops out, an animal or you startle something. So then we start seeing, like, slowly you start seeing like trash, right? And we're just like, well, everyone knows that there's a bunch of kids that party down here, so it could just be trash for kids eating and leaving it there and stuff like that. And then start going up ahead a little bit more, and then you kind of see like more, and it's accumulated, almost like someone just decided to dump a truck there and just piles of just like random stuff. But then if you looked at it, it's kind of like it looked like someone was recently there or had been there and using the area, because it was a disaster, but it looked like an organized disaster. And then you can see there was like this hut, right? And this hut was like made with like bars and wood, and it was just like it looked like a tent that they tried to make with like cloth and shirts And so we're kind of going around just like stumbling across this thing, and you can see everything in detail, man, because I don't know if you know, like if you've ever been to the snow, if it's dark outside, even if you're in a very dark wooded area, like you can
Yeah.
see clear as day. Like it's clear. It's like almost illuminated, you know? You don't need a light, you don't need anything. There's not as dark as people think. It's very bright. And so you could see everything, and so we just kind of just started roaming around, and then something started to smell really bad. Like the closer you got to the tent, the worse it smelled. And we're looking around and stuff, and then I'm right behind Chewy. Chewy's the one ahead of us, and then you got Hugo, Tony, Justin behind me, and we're just kind of like smelling it. I'm just like, you guys. I turn around, I say, you guys smell that? And it's just like, dude, it just smells really bad. It smells like dead skunk, you know.
Ouch.
And it's a very very like if I could smell it today, it'd be like wet dead skunk. But a lot of people would mistake it for like weed, because that's like the first thing Justin said was like, someone's been smoking reefer out here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, obviously you don't know what weed actually smells like, but this is like a putrid smell, like really bad odor. And if I could describe it, man, this is a very unique, because someone was like, well, what does it really smell like? And I'm like, imagine if you were to get rotten tomatoes, throw it at a skunk, let the skunk die. That's what it smells like. Like if you ever smell like a rotten tomato, that's what it smells like. It's a very, very distinctive smell. And I was like, it just smells like dead tomatoes and like skunk, I said. And like sweat. So I don't know how Chewy could stand the smell, because he ended up checking inside the tent, because he was like, oh, I'm gonna go inside the tent. And we're like, no, Chewy, like don't, like what if, like a million things are going through my head. Like what if someone's sleeping in there and get up and try to stab you with like some random makeshift knife or whatever. He's like hanging out and they're trying to see everything. You can just kind of hear his little voice being like, hey man, like there's like some stuff in here. There's like food, there's like bones and stuff. And I'm just like, what the hell? And so
Crazy.
at the corner of my eye, man, because like everyone's kind of scattered at this point, and then everyone's like, well, this is not interesting. Maybe they, all the stories that they're talking about is probably just like a person or something. And it started getting to the point where we're like, dude, it's getting late. Let's get back. We have to climb the hill back up the fish hatchery, and then like still go across the school and back to our place. So at that point, I turn around to go try to get Chewy, and because he's still in the tent. And then like about, I want to say 35 yards, man. So like, I want to say between 80 and 90 feet. I saw this like thing kind of poke its head out from behind this tree. And I looked and I'm like, what the heck? And so, immediately I'm thinking, there's someone out there like probably trying to get by and he doesn't want to disturb us or something, But something told me that what I was looking at, we were in its territory. Something, just the feeling, the instant of the feeling. And I just remember just being like, hey, and I got the attention of the guys behind me. And I was like, there's someone out there, man. And I said it out loud so that they could hear me, because if they were trying to bother us, if you say something out loud, you're letting them know we know you're there. Like if you're trying to sneak up on us, it's not going to work, kind of thing.
Yep.
And then also because Chewy was still in the tent, I'm like trying to be like, hey, dude, come out. And so now I'm between the tent and Chewy, and then I have the guys behind me. And I see this thing finally poke its head out again, and I lock eyes with it. And you could see the definition, because it showed more of its body and then the height. It looked like if you were to take Bigfoot and you were to run it over with like the lawnmower like 50 times, it was missing patches. Like the chest, you could see there was still hair. But there was definition and muscle, man. There was like, you could see the 6-pack or 12-pack, whatever you want to call it, but you could definitely see muscle. You could see scars. You could see the chest, how built it was, and then you could see like there's patches of hair around, and then you could see the hand when it was around the tree trying to poke out,
Yep.
and you could see its face, and I could see the facial face of it.
Wow.
And when I'm locked in with this thing, man, or this person, whether it was a person or something, I don't know, but it was above, and I know because I'm 6 foot. At the time, I was like 5'8", 5'7", but when you're a kid growing up, height is everything, man. Especially since the tallest one out of all of us at the time was Ulysses. Ulysses was 6 feet at when we were in 8th grade. So knowing him and everyone always trying to be tall, you get used to knowing how tall things are because you can become so obsessed. So I'm looking at this thing and it's tall, muscular. You can smell it. You can see that it's sweating. Yeah, you can see the breath coming out of it. Its mouth was kind of hanging loose a little bit, and you can see the condensation and from the air, and you could tell it was like either gassed out or something. Like it's been through some work, and it was just staring at us, and I'm looking at him, and I'm literally like now approaching slowly to the tent because I'm like, Chewy, and I'm whispering, I'm like, Chewy, don't move. And I was like, I'm gonna come and get you, and then like back up slowly, and then we're gonna run, right? So I'm approaching as slow as I can, man, and like this thing is still just locked dead eyes with me too. And immediately, the moment it heard like a crack of like the snow being like pushed down and crushed, the thing just fucking like legitimately just growled at me and growled at us. And immediately my first reaction wasn't to run. My first reaction was to yell back. His reaction triggered my reaction in the same way, It wasn't like, and then run. It was more like I barked back. And it just kind of sat there, and the shoulders just kept moving up and down. And then it was just like huffing and puffing. And then Chewy came out, looked at the thing, because Chewy's like 30 feet closer, than I am. And I'm just like, he saw it. And by the time we looked back, everyone was gone except for me and Chewy. And we're in fear, man, like staring at this thing. And it finally like moved back behind the tree. And like all I could see is his head. So you could see the facial structure, that it wasn't normal. You can see the nose is a lot wider and kind of indented, kind of more pressed down but wide. And
sorry, I lost you there for a few seconds.
What's that?
I lost you for a few seconds.
So this thing we were staring at, now me and Chewy are kind of terrified, but he's backing up slowly towards me. And I'm seeing this thing as it's reacting towards the movement of what we're doing. And I think it was more of a defensive cry to like, hey, leave me alone, get out of here, more than like, I'm going to hurt you. Because like I said, it moved back behind the tree from viewing, and all you could see its face. And I was just more focused on the face now. And yeah, man, so the detail, like brown eyes, very dark brown eyes, I remember. The skin was kind of a reddish, not the skin, but the hair was kind of a mixture between like a very dark brown and a dark reddish, Smelled really bad, like rotten tomatoes and like skunk, and like something.
I lost you dead again for a few seconds.
Oh, just how it smelled, the definition that I could tell from its facial appearance, and just the hair on top of it, the hair coming behind the ears.
What smell did you have? Did you feel?
Oh, it was, you could still smell it because it was pretty close, and it was just like that rotten tomato, dead animal skunk smell, and then just like sweat, just like a very sweaty smell. And it was every time you breathed or took a breath in, it just hit you, and it was like,
yeah, I know what you mean exactly.
It was like you know, the reference is like, oh, I just ate that smell. That's how it hit you. And, you know, from the appearance, I remember it was just, I don't know, man, like a caveman, I want to say. I always make the joke. I was like, we weren't looking at a caveman. We were looking at Robin Williams. If like his nose.
Did he leave any footmarks?
We never went back, dude. We never went to go check. No. Oh. So what happened was, so now this thing is behind. Like I said, it didn't seem like it wanted to hurt us. I think we were just disturbing its area. So when it growled, I growled back, got Chewy out of there because Chewy was staring at it. And when Chewy saw it coming out of the tent, he just went mute. And that's when he got behind me, and I'm like, I told him to run because then I would be right behind him. And like I said, I caught the last glimpse of this thing, and then we just went off on our way. Didn't chase us, didn't growl back again. We just ran, right? And you know, so we run. He's like waiting for me at the corner of that fence because he couldn't push. He was too small to push it on his own. So he had to wait for me, and then I had to crawl and push it with my body because there was no one else left. So we're running. We get to the point where it's at the bottom of the big tree. Yeah, and then we finally get to the point where we're like, okay, we're safe. We're like in a lighted area, and we're climbing up the hill. And then we come to the school, we cross the school, and, he's terrified. We get to the point where it's like the park where Justin's house is. And I'm just kind of like in my head the whole way I'm thinking that. I was like, these guys left us. They didn't even come back for us, or they weren't even waiting by the fence. They just ran home. And I just remember telling Chewy, just go home. I said, I'm going to go home too. And at that time, like, I knew I was going to get in trouble. Everyone's probably going to get in trouble because I don't think they went back home the way they went out. I think everyone went in like they got caught, sneaking out. So I knew I wasn't going to get in trouble. My parents were just going to be surprised. Be like, hey, I thought you were staying at Justin's. And, yeah, so I had to explain that. So I get home, catching my breath. I'm sweating. And my mom's like, it's like 10:30, they were already asleep. And so I wake up my mom and everything. And I was like, Justin's mom came home. So I was like, I'm obviously lying to my mom. And I was like, so, she got mad because he wasn't telling her that I was staying over, or that he was having people over. And so I just came home. She's like, okay, whatever. Not even 5 minutes later, dude, I get a knock at the door. And it's Chewy's parents.
Oh yeah?
Chewy's parents with Chewy in the car down because I lived in the second floor, and so their car was right. It was parked in one of the neighbors' places, and Chewy was in the backseat with the sisters crying, and then the mom and the dad hysterically yelling at my mom, asking what had happened to Chewy. And then my dad gets woken up, and now it's like this shouting match. I come outside from my bedroom. My sister gets awakened. My sister at the time was like 2 years old. We shared a room. She wakes up. She starts crying. There's commotion. The neighbors wake up and everything, and they're talking so fast in Spanish. And then I'm trying to calm them down, and I'm like, well, what's wrong? It's like, they're like, Chewy came home, and he's not talking right. He's terrified. He won't say what he saw. What were you guys doing? Why were you guys out there? This and that. And then I said, like, dude, like, first of all, I didn't do anything to him. And you can ask him when he's calm. And then I just pointed at, I just looked at Chewy from upstairs, and I had my hand out and be like, dude, tell him, kind of like singing, like, tell him, dude. I was like, you're making me look bad. I'm the only one that stayed behind. And I said, nothing happened. I was like, I'm the one that stayed behind. The rest of the kids ran home. And I basically went through the whole story of what I saw and what he saw and what everyone else saw. All right, so the next day comes, man. And I run into Chewy's mom. And, I'm mad, right? I'm mad because I go, I'm going to go check on everyone. But why am I the one that has to go check on everyone when they're the ones that ran first and they should be checking on if me and Chewie are okay? So I go, and in the midst of it, I run into Chewie's mom, and she pulls me aside. And she's like, "I need to have a talk with you and be honest with me." She said, "What happened last night?" And I go, "Did he not tell you?" He's like, "Chewie hasn't been talking right this whole morning." And I said, "What do you mean?" "He's stuttering." And I go, "What do you mean he's stuttering?" And he keeps stuttering when he's trying to talk now. And she's like worried and crying in front of me. And I'm like, this is a mom whose son came home terrified at like past 10 at night. We shouldn't have been out. And now he's stuttering. And I said, maybe he's still spooked. Nah, man. So I told her the story again about what happened. And it almost seemed like she was unsatisfied with it. She thought that all of us played a prank on him to get him scared because he was the youngest,
Oh, okay.
And that we scared him so bad that we psychologically traumatized him.
Yeah.
We caused trauma to him. And so by the time Chewie was able to recover from it, and then he was finally able to talk. But I'll tell you, John, his stutter never went away.
Never since that
Never.
day?
Till this day, that kid still stutters. From that. But it's gotten better with speech therapy, but he still stutters. And that's how terrified I said. He had to be so terrified.
Yeah, of course, man. Crazy.
So just really quick, Chewie, the reason because this is probably something that people are going to ask. Why is his name Chewie? His name is Chewie because in Mexico, if your name is Jesus or Jesus, the nickname for you, kind of like if you're Richard, your name is Dick. Well, Mexicans have the same thing. For me, my first name is Jose or Jose. And my nickname for that name would be Chepe. Okay. And for Jesus or Jesus, his is Chewie. Every Jesus or Jesus, their nickname is Chewie. So that's why I call it the Chewie stories, because his real name is Jesus.
Okay. Great one. Very interesting.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, I said that at the beginning, but it's such a detailed story. There's so much behind it because of everything that leads up to it, why he was part of our group, why he hung out with us, and how much we protected that kid. He was he is still one of like our very good friends. We still all of us still look out for each other, man. Even though I was angry for like a week. You guys left us there. You say every name in the book, and you guys say that you protect us and you're hardcore, but as like you just left us for dead there, and they never lived it down, man. I still give them crap about it every time we get around, but they won't tell the story. They keep saying, we just saw a man, we just got scared. But I was like, I'm the one that looked at it for the longest, and then Chewie the second was the one that looked for it the longest. So I go, Chewie, they didn't see what we saw, huh? And he's like, he always shakes his head. He goes, I don't want to talk about it.
I do have some stories. I'm going to stop recording. That's the story, right?
Yeah. That's the story. That was
great
the Chewie
story, man.
That's the Chewie story. And whether, to the parents of every kid. And, the story went around.